Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on this wet and windy Thursday afternoon. My name is Mike Tansey from Chess. I'm the Account and Marketing Director, and with me today I have the brilliant James Mallew, our Principal Consultant. James and I are very excited to bring you a glimpse of the future, running through and demonstrating some of the latest features that will be available to you in SharePoint Online. And no surprises, there are some great AI elements featuring in our demos. So for those that haven't been to a Silver Sands, or should I now say Chess webinar before, we're running through just a little bit of housekeeping. So the session is being recorded, a copy of which will be made available to you all tomorrow. For any questions, we're saving 10 minutes at the end of the webinar, but if you want to post your questions, there's a Q&A tab at the top, and we'll come onto those at the end. And finally, we're offering a one-to-one workshop for each of the companies here today. It's a consultant-led session to discuss your specific SharePoint scenarios with James and the team, and to take us up on that, tick the request follow-up button in the survey, and one of our team will be in touch. So before I hand over to James, just a quick announcement. So we're excited to share that Silver Sands were recently acquired by Chess. So instead of doing the usual Silver Sands overview, I'll do a quick overview to Chess. So Chess is one of the UK's largest independent resellers, dedicated to making it easy for our customers to work securely anywhere from anytime from anywhere. We achieve this through a comprehensive range of services that you can see on the screen in front of you. So this ranges from connectivity for your internet needs to cloud for as a service offerings around infrastructure, voice and software, to devices for your laptops, desktops and tablets, digital for the websites, web applications and intranet, and security for end-to-end security services, ranging from things such as pen tests through to fully managed SOCs. Chess actually have a dedicated sister company called Cyberlabs, which kind of runs about 20 million in terms of revenue. And lastly, professional services, so adopting, consulting on and managing projects and resources. Chess has a diverse customer base of about 25,000 customers, and more than 70% of whom have been with us for over 5 years or more. And we cater for a wide range of customer types, from the small businesses through to the large enterprise and public sector organizations. And just for assurance for all those Silver Sands customers, and we know we've got a lot of you on the call today, the Chess approach perfectly aligns to the Silver Sands approach to consult, deliver, and help adopt as part of the process, and then to provide ongoing customer support. And that's Chess in a slide. So I'll now hand over to James to kick off the webinar. Over to you, James. And James, you're on mute. Let's start that again. Over to you, James.
As if I haven't used Teams a couple of times before. So welcome everyone to today's session. My name's James. I need a bit of training on Teams. And over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to be demonstrating to you some of the latest features and capabilities within SharePoint. Now, I've divided the session into 3 key areas. I believe the 3 key areas represent those scenarios where I believe Microsoft have made the biggest investments in adding new capabilities into the SharePoint product. I'm hoping there'll be something of interest for all of you. So whether you're a intranet design person, whether you're an administrator, or whether you're interested in how AI can enhance your SharePoint experience, then hoping there's something for you here. Now, I would say that everything I'm going to show today is either available within your environment already, is in the process of being rolled out. And unless I talk about licensing specifically, everything is covered within a standard E3 license. But spoiler alert, there are a few things I'm going to talk about that are not covered in an E3 license. And I will, of course, explain how they're costed, how you pay for them as part of going through the demos. If you have any questions at all as I'm going through, please feel free, add them into the chat. We've left some time at the end, so it'd be great to hear questions you've got or any feedback that you have. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is site designs and page authoring. And for that, I'll go straight into a demo. So what we have here is a SharePoint site That is just an out-of-the-box SharePoint site. I've set it up using one of the great templates that you have out of the box provided by Microsoft. And I want to talk about some of the capabilities in terms of branding and page design. So the first thing with branding is the ability to apply your own fonts, something that is been asked for many years, and this is now possible to do. So under the change the look option, I can go into font and I can select either one of the fonts that Microsoft provide themselves, or as an organization, you can publish your own fonts. So in this case, I've got an Arial font. So if I select Arial, it's going to apply Arial font to my site. In terms of changing the theme, this capability has been around for a long time, okay? But there is a key difference, and the difference is the way that you as an organization can manage and publish the themes. Historically, this required a bit of developer type work, but now themes and fonts are centrally managed within the area we call Brand Center. So this is a SharePoint site, a single SharePoint site that is used to manage the fonts that you want to publish, your brand colors, and the brand themes that you want to use. And I should also say that the Brand Center is the place where you manage your organization images and document templates as well. Now, if we, in the Brand Center, for instance, have a look what's going on, you can see here I've set up 3 colors. So if I go into brand colors, I can essentially add colors into my brand based on your organization branding identity. So provide a hex color or an RGB color for whatever you want and give the color a name. Once I've got the colors added, I can then develop my own theme. So if I go down here and say theme, add new theme, I can select a primary color for my theme. So I'm going to select blueberry. I can select text color, which I'm just going to select a default one, but you could change the default one. My background color in this case is going to be white. Again, I can select the default one. This is not a dark theme, i.e. it doesn't use a dark color background. And then finally, I can select an accent color, which I'll select raspberry. It gives me this handy little tool that tells me whether any of the colors that I've selected wouldn't provide the correct aspect ratio for accessibility. So it's given me yeah, this is fine, all the colors you've selected in this context. I can click next. I'm going to give my theme a name, so I'll just call it blueberry. And then I'll click save. That's what my theme will look like. And if I go back to my site, a quick refresh, that theme will now be available and published to the whole organization. So anyone that's had to do this previously using PowerShell, hopefully you'll appreciate how much simpler this is to create a theme. One other thing I'm going to mention here. So the latest thing to roll out is the fact that now the site owner can themselves design a new theme. So what I showed you just now was centrally the brand manager generating a theme and publishing it. The new feature to roll out is that the site owner can do a similar thing. So they can generate a new theme in the same way I've just generated it. So I'll just quickly do, let's say, yellow theme, text color, that color, background color, that, choose an access color. It's given me a warning, by the way, accessibility, quite right, because that yellow there would not work very well on a white background. And I'll give it a name, yellow, click save. Now, effectively, what I've done as the site owner is I've generated a theme for my site, not for the rest of the organization. So if I go up and select the option to change the look, what you'll notice now, if I go into theme, it says from this site, from your organization. So I can now select that. Hopefully you can see that's not really very accessible, so I wouldn't want to use that, but my blueberry one will work quite nicely. Okay. So that's site level branding. Now, the next thing I want to show is some of the enhancements that have been added in respect of authoring and publishing pages. So I'm going to go to generate a new page. Now, I could use one of the great templates that Microsoft provide, but I'm feeling creative today, so I'm going to go entirely off-piste and I'm going to generate a new page from a blank template. As soon as we get into the page authoring experience, you'll notice a change in the way that the tools are laid out. So we have this toolbox on the right-hand side, and this allows us to quickly see the web parts that are available for the page. If you don't know, the web parts are essentially your building blocks for a page. So if I want to add news content here, I can simply just drag and drop the web part across. It does make the page authoring experience a little bit simpler. From here, I've got images, my stock images, and if I click See More Media and click Browse Images, I have access to stock images, but more importantly, my organization images. These are stored in your brand center, and in here you typically publish standard icons, logos, people, places, scenes, and importantly for me, a whole catalog of pictures of llamas. So this is my page. And what I want to do is work on the title area. Now, historically, title areas have always been mandatory in SharePoint pages. And there's some pretty good options in terms of how you can lay them out. Microsoft have added a few new ones recently, the author one, the fade one. But you know what? None of them really satisfy the need for the page I've got. So I'm just going to delete it. Another new feature, you don't need a title section on your page. Get rid of it entirely. I'm going to add my own one. So I'm going to add a new section. And I could build a section from scratch, but I'm going to use another new feature, which is called Design Ideas. I'm going to click into this, and it's going to give me design ideas. So here's some ideas, it says, for this part of the page. So let's have a look. I like the look of that one. So I'm going to add that one into my page. Okay. So what essentially it's done is added a predefined series of web parts and content into that section of the page. And because I'm kind of liking the look of this, I'm going to add another section down here, into this section down here. I'm going to use this again, but I'm going to add a different layout of content. So I'll just click See More Ideas. And I think I'm going to pick this one here. Okay. I've added that into the top. So let me just add the section again, add the top again. Back into my design ideas. Let's go with that one. Okay. So a couple of other things that I can do with the page that is new. This is a really minor thing, but it used to really annoy me, is when you've got text on the page, one of the things that you couldn't do until recently is change the line spacing. So I've now got the option to increase the line spacing that exists around the text. You probably couldn't see that changing, so I just make it a bigger change. Okay. A minor point, but nevertheless important. The other thing that I can do is you notice here that I've added 3 images with content beneath them. I now have the option with all of the images to use cutout shapes. So if I want to use circles, I don't have to dig out Photoshop or PowerPoint in my case to basically do the editing work on images. I can go straight in and then essentially just apply a shape over it. Great for people's faces and so forth. And the other thing is all of the sections that you have on pages can now have background images. So if I go into edit the properties of this section, you can see down here, it says background ideas. And I can pick some pre-canned ones, but in my case, I'm just going to add one. So I'm going to go to stock images. Let's go for mountains and snow. That one. And it's going to add it as a background image. Now, an important point, obviously, when you're using background images, as you can see here, white text on a background image that's white doesn't always work well from a contrast point of view. So if I click into more settings here, you have some options of dealing with how to have the image in the background. So what I'm going to do is change the overlay to be a gradient, and I'm going to have it a gradient from left to right. And what I'm essentially doing is saying darken the left side of the image to make sure the text stands out. So that's some features in terms of building pages. Now, one other area I just want to touch upon in respect of pages is a new feature that's been rolled out as part of your SharePoint landing page. So the SharePoint landing page is where you go to if you ever click on the icon up here that says SharePoint. And a landing page effectively aggregates together for you as an individual your news, the SharePoint sites you interact with, etc. But the new feature they've added here is called Pages. And this does a couple of really interesting things. The first thing is that it aggregates together all of the pages that I have recently been editing across your entire SharePoint estate. So if you're a content author who generates pages across many SharePoint sites, this is a great way to see all of those pages that you've recently interacted with, irrespective of the site that they exist in. And from here, I can open the page, I can edit it, and I can publish it. That's super useful. I can also generate a new page from here. So as opposed to creating it from blank, this time I'm just going to create a page from one of the templates. So I pick this template and I'm into my editing experience. Now it's the same editing experience that I just was demonstrating. But there's a key difference. Because I started the process from within the SharePoint home, when it comes to publish the page, I can either publish it to a SharePoint site that I have access to, or publish it as a private page. Now, obviously, publishing it to a SharePoint site I have access to is effectively no different than going into that site and publishing it there. But publishing it as a private page is interesting because it allows me as an individual to generate and publish a series of SharePoint pages that do not exist within a SharePoint site. They're separate from a SharePoint site. They actually exist within my OneDrive. Now, you might be thinking, why would I ever do that? Here's the answer, or one of the answers. I might want to generate an emailer to my colleagues or to part of the organization. So I'll say latest news. I'm going to save it as draft, and I'm going to use the feature, if I just publish it, publish page, I'm going to use the feature to send it as email. And this will allow me to send an email that takes the SharePoint page content, puts it into the email, and then allows me to send it out. So I might do this for a project update. I might be running a charity event, whatever it is I might want to do. So these are private, these are personal pages. You elect, by the way, who you want to have access to that page. You have to actually specify who needs to have rights to it. Okay, so that is some changes in respect of site designs and page authoring. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about AI and Copilot. So AI is everywhere at the moment. And if you listen to anything from Microsoft or read anything from Microsoft, every third word will probably be Copilot. What I wanted to do today is show you a couple of actual scenarios that I believe will add significant value to organizations in terms of the use of AI. And I've tried to make them quite simple, straightforward scenarios that hopefully everyone will think, yeah, actually that makes sense. So let's dive in. The first one I'm going to talk about is a scenario in respect of document libraries. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my site and I'm going to go to a document library. Now, so far, nothing exciting, right? Document libraries have been in SharePoint since the year 2000. And what I've done with this document library which stores documents that describe job roles and responsibilities, is I've added a series of metadata columns. These columns collect data about the document to allow us to report, to allow us to sort, to allow us to trigger process automation, to allow us to govern the document, to allow us to find the document. Metadata is great. It does lots of things. However, it has one significant drawback. Someone has to type it in. And the problem with metadata that's manually captured, if you take the idea that 20% of everything that people type is either misspelled or mistyped, in my case, it's much higher than that, then you're going to get inconsistent metadata at best. And it takes people time. So how can AI help? Well, I'm going to just upload some documents into this library. So I'm just going to drag and drop 2 documents, okay? And these are just Word documents. They're not pre-structured in any given way. I've given the AI, as you'll see, no training at all. What I've done is used a new feature called autofill columns. So if I go into this column and go into column settings, click edit, this feature autofill appears, okay? And essentially I can use the power of large language models to ask a question, to give it a prompt, and it will basically understand the intent of the prompt. It will look at the content of the document that I've uploaded. It will attempt to resolve the prompt, and it will populate the location column with the value it's found. Now you can see here, if I hover over, it's a little bit small, it gives you a helping hand. Okay, so in my case, I've kind of summarized it, but it says, please extract the location from the document, ensuring it's capitalized properly, blah, 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 blah. Now, if I go to some of the other columns, department, it'll be no surprise to you that I've also said, similar thing, autofill column, what department does this role exist within? This prompt, if it'll take a second, it will come up with a suggestion of how to write the prompt. So same thing here. Please extract the department name. Now it doesn't know where the department name is in the document, right? It's not that they're not in the same places. And then the last one that I'll show you, which is subtly different, is the summary here. Edit columns, edit the prompt, summarize the responsibilities of this role in 5 bulleted points, okay? Now, just to show you the power of the large language model, I'm just going to add an additional column into here. And I'm going to say multi-line text, next. I'm going to say, just give it a name. I'm going to give it a value. I'm going to say, summarize the key responsibilities of this role, so good so far, in the style of a pirate. Now, I appreciate there may not be any business use why you want to do this, but I want to emphasize how large language models effectively bring a lot of power. So I've given it a sample text document. This isn't training it, by the way. This is just me validating that it's going to be able to understand what I've asked of it. So that doesn't look very piratey to me. No, okay, so it's ignored what I said there. Fine, I will move on. Nonetheless, hopefully you get the idea of the principle of how I've used the column fill and a large language model. I'll just go back to autofill those columns. So this was the 2 documents I uploaded while I was talking there. And you can see there, it's populated the location for both of them, the department, who it reports to, and a summary of the document. Now, here's my spoiler alert. This capability is not free. However, it is also not very expensive to make use of. So let me kind of just pop back to my slide and explain how it works. It is a part of the features that come under the banner of SharePoint Premium. These are effectively not included in any license that you have. They are charged on a pay-as-you-go model, consumption-based model. So the autofill option costs you 5 cents. Apologies, it's in US, but give or take, I'm sure you can do a currency conversion, 5 cents per document. And every month you get 100 transactions free. So clearly, if you're uploading 100 documents a month and you want them to autofill the columns, it costs you nothing. If you're uploading 10,000, yes, there is a price. But if you compare the amount of time it will take a human to do the same thing, this will probably be significantly cheaper, okay? And this is the key thing, that you only pay for what you use. So where you've got a scenario where it's useful, you can enable it and you can pay for it as you go. If it's a one-off exercise, you can then turn it off. If it's an ongoing thing, you leave it on. But you only need to pay for what you use. So it's not a case of licensing people across the organization. Okay, so that's autofill columns. The next scenario I want to talk about is agents for SharePoint. So essentially, agents for SharePoint allow you to use an agent in SharePoint to ask questions of a given SharePoint site. It's my SharePoint site. Okay. Now, why would this be useful? Now, if you think about an end user going to a SharePoint site, typically, one of the key reasons why they're going to a SharePoint site is because they are looking for a piece of information. So how can they find a piece of information? Well, they can search for it. So if you do a search, you'll get a set of search results that are links to documents and pages. You could navigate to it through the navigation. Hopefully you can find what you're looking for through the navigation. Or the page author may well have published a link on the home page or one of the other pages that points you in the direction of the content you're looking for. These things have served us well for the last 20 years. Let me just contrast it. Copilot Agent exists for every single SharePoint site. And by default, it is scoped to the site you're looking at. So if I ask you the question, so what are our values? If this is the piece of information that the user was looking for, then the agent has answered it. Our values are centered around authenticity, inspiration, and relevance, etc., etc. Oh, very interesting. What are the key principles of our values? Etc., etc. Okay. Now, let me just contrast that. If I was looking for that information through one of the other 3 metrics, I could do a search for key values, and I might find the page that contains the information. I've still got to open the page and read it. There's no link down here that says about our key values, although I might think it might be in how we work. And there's nothing on the home page. So suddenly I've made content that is available within this site easily accessible, but most importantly, accessible to a user in the way that they want to ask the question. So let me show you something else. So often something I want to know what's changed in the site. I can ask the question because it knows, so it's going to tell me. Okay, so it's giving me, sorry, it's jumping about a bit, but it's giving me the answer about what are the most recent documents that have changed in the site. And each of these has a citation with a link to the document, okay? Now, important point. I've said that the agent is focused on all of the content within this site, pages, documents, but it does enforce the security that applies to that content. So if I don't have rights to a piece of content, it doesn't return it, Now, this is pretty cool. And for me, I believe this will fundamentally change the way people look for content. However, it does actually get better. So I might, in this site, I might have a requirement where we are recruiting for a given role for our organization. And we've got a number of roles open: customer service rep, HR manager, marketing executive. And in the HR manager role, I'm storing all of the CVs for the people that are applying for that role. And what I want to do is I want to use my agent to allow me to ask questions about those people who are applying for the HR manager role. Sounds complicated to do, but it's literally select the folder, go up here, create agent. And what that will do is generate an agent whose focus is solely on the content within this library. Now I've got one here already, and I'm just going to show you how it differs from the other one. So I'm going to go into edit mode. So essentially, if I'd click create the agent, it would have kind of done this type of thing. So sources has nothing to do with Heinz or HP. Sources is to do with where the agent gets its content from. So if you recall, I was clicking on the HR manager folder, and that's what appears here as sources. I can add some additional sources. So I can say, bring together this content from this library, this content from this SharePoint site, this individual file from that SharePoint site. So I can bring together a series of sources and essentially say, you are grounded on this. So from a from a content point of view, grounding is just saying this is the content you're looking at, okay? I can also give the agent an identity. So I've given it a name, I've given it a little icon, and then I can specify behavior. So I can give it a welcome question. I can give it a series of what we call starter prompts. So these are the things that appear to help users get started in asking it questions. And then I can influence how it responds. So in my case, I've said provide accurate information about the content in the selected files and reply in a formal tone. You can say in a semi-formal tone in the style of a pirate. But I have said, if anyone asks a question about Bob, provide a recipe based on seasonal vegetables. And this is, again, no business case for this, but I just want to demonstrate how large language models can help in these scenarios. So if I then ask the question of the agent, list all participants, it's going to take the content from the CVs and it's going to list who the people are. Okay. Now, again, because Copilot's pretty good at doing these stuff, I could actually say create a summary table of the applicants, including their name, profile, summary of their experience. And so it generates me a table. I can ask it a question that isn't already there. So do any candidates speak French? Yep, Miriam speaks French. And then let's see what it says. What about Bob? So he hasn't actually answered my question, but it has done what I've asked it to do, which is provide a seasonal vegetable recipe in quite a lot of detail there. Okay, now a couple of other things. So I've said you can create the agent, and therefore the agent can be scoped on a particular set of content, either within one SharePoint site or across a number of them. And therefore people within this site can use this agent to interact with it. But we can actually do another interesting thing with it. I can take the agent, I can copy the link for Teams, and if I go into a private chat within Teams, I've got one here, I can then have a group of people that within a Teams group chat can use this agent and ask it questions. So I've already added this agent to this chat. So I can say at HR, there's my agent. Do any candidates speak French? Now, what's interesting here is this chat contains people that don't have access to the SharePoint site. And that's not right, excuse me. So HR. List all candidates. So what it's going to do, on the basis it now finds the content, is it's going to say, okay, but some of the people in this chat, oh, it's not working. Apologies, I will move on. It would typically say this. Please review my response before I share in the chat. Some people in this chat don't have access to some of the sources I've searched through. So effectively, I do have access. So it's going to basically say, before I share the response, have a look at the response. See where this probably won't work. Have a look at the response and tell me you are happy that this response is being shared. Now, you're not sharing the content, you're simply sharing the response that Copilot's giving. So this is, please can you review and confirm that I can send this response to everyone in the chat. This is where the chat came from. These are the files used in the response. None of mine have sensitivity labels, but I could say this could give me the sensitivity label, and I can say that's fine. What it's telling me there is fine. I can share that with the rest of the candidates. Okay. So that is Copilot agents. Now, if I just go back to my slides, I'm sure the question you're asking is, am I licensed for this? So there's three ways that you can be licensed for these agents. The first way is if you've got a Microsoft 365 Copilot agent, Copilot license, you will be licensed for this. In fact, as of today, you'll probably see it. As of the beginning of the month, if your organization has at least 50 Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses, everyone in your organization will be able to create and use agents in SharePoint. Okay. In the future, Microsoft are looking at pay-as-you-go options because they clearly recognize that as a tool to find and consume content, it adds significant value to a broad selection of users across your organization. In fact, for me, it fundamentally changes the way we think about looking for and finding information. So I'm very excited about where they go with this option. And I'm also very pleased that they've recognized how significant this capability is and therefore reduced the entry level to organizations that perhaps aren't rolling out Microsoft 365 Copilot at the moment to a broad set of people. Okay, so last section I want to talk about today is around administration. Now, one of the things that we find is that organizations are storing more content in SharePoint, generating more SharePoint sites than ever. In fact, Microsoft gave a stat the other day, 2 million SharePoint sites are created every day. Every single day. So it's not unusual when we look at organizations' environments for them to have thousands, tens of thousands, and in some cases, hundreds of thousands of SharePoint sites. And obviously significant volumes of content. So this creates a problem because a SharePoint site is effectively a container and it contains content and it needs to be managed throughout its life cycle. And what organizations are finding is manually managing that volume of SharePoint sites is becoming an increasingly difficult thing to do. And one of the things that they're finding is content oversharing, accidental content oversharing, is increasingly becoming a big problem and a concern when they're looking at technologies such as AI. So SharePoint Advanced Management effectively provides a set of tools to automate and govern SharePoint at scale. So I'm just going to dive into a couple of these to give you an idea. Now, I mentioned before that the way to think about SharePoint site is a container that has content, and that container needs to have owners. Okay, it's fundamentally important that you think about SharePoint sites as having owners. And by owners, I don't mean IT, actually someone in your organization who has responsibility for the content that exists within that site. Now, clearly over time, people leave organizations, they change their roles, new joiners join. And so for SharePoint sites, this ownership changes throughout the life cycle. And also the site eventually becomes less useful, inactive, and taking actions such as deleting it, setting it to read only, archiving it, those things also need to be automated. But for site ownership, I'm just going to run through the principle of this. So we set up what we call a site ownership policy, and the policy determines the characteristics that relate to a well-owned SharePoint site, or what the characteristics that you want to apply to site ownership. So effectively, I'm just going to zoom in on this. So we set up a policy, and in the policy, we say every site needs to have at least X number of owners or admins. Okay, I won't talk about the difference now, but essentially you could say every site needs to have at least 2 owners or 3 owners. And if you find a site that does not conform to this, what do you do about it? So A, notify the current site admins to tell them that they're falling foul of this policy. A and B, notify the manager of the previous site owner or admin. Or C, notify people who are active members of the site, okay, and select the number of people to notify. Now, when we do that, we then say, if this site remains outside of our policy, i.e. remains ownerless for more than 3 months, what do you want to do about it? No change, do nothing about it, or set access to read only, because you can guarantee if it's a well-used site and you set access to read only, someone's going to shout. And the person who shouts the loudest probably is going to be your owner. So once we apply the policy, we can then say run in simulation mode or run in active mode. And obviously simulation mode will just give you the analytics about what it will do when you run it in active mode. So obviously run it in simulation mode first, because you want to test to see how many sites are going to be impacted. Once you run it, you then get the stats. So you can imagine in this case that what it's saying here is that out of 311 sites, it has managed to resolve all but 15. Okay, so there's 15 that someone has to go get involved with and then go and look at identifying who the owners are. Now that's for 311 non-compliant sites. I know when we've done audits of client environments, that would be a low number. Okay, so a lot of sites have ownerless sites, and for an individual to go through and manually resolve who the owners of those sites are is a significant undertaking. Okay, so let's say we've defined our owners. The next thing we're going to do is address the problem of oversharing. Okay, SharePoint, the clue's in the name, makes it very easy to share content. And the most common problem we see is oversharing internally. So effectively, this aspect allows us to push the responsibility onto, guess who? The site owners, to say, your site has been flagged as having lots of oversharing potential issues. Can you go through and perform a review? So how this effectively works is when you've selected your sites to go for review, it triggers an email to the owner to say, here's your site. Your site seems to have 200 links to everyone in your organization. However, your site sensitivity is flagged as confidential. Okay, and you've got external sharing turned on. So the owners will get this. They can effectively then go to the site, and there'll be an option there saying site reviews. When they go into that, they will then get a list of all the individual files that have been shared outside of the boundary of the site security, i.e. shared with everyone. They then have to go through and select the options and say, yep, this sharing's fine, or no, remove the links. Because a lot of the times people have accidentally shared a link to a document with everyone in your organization, because guess what? That is the default way that sharing links works in SharePoint. So it's no surprise that people have a lot of these sharing links set up. Now, SharePoint Advanced Management, again, is not free. Okay, if you've got E5 licenses, there are some reports, data access governance reports that you get. However, the rest of the capabilities aren't there. So for you to license it, you've got two ways. Microsoft announced at Ignite that Microsoft 365 Copilot customers will have these capabilities included as part of your Copilot licensing. They see these features as important for organizations looking to mitigate risk as part of their deployment of Copilot. If you want to purchase these separately, you can. Again, apologies for the dollars here, £3 per user per month. Now, if in your environment you only have 100 or 200 SharePoint sites, you can definitely say, do you know what? I don't need that. I can do it manually. If you've got 10,000 or 50,000 sites, you're not going to be doing this manually, and you do need to do it. So there is a question of, you're going to have to automate it somehow. This might be worth looking at. Okay, so pretty much on time, hopefully. That is everything that I wanted to cover. Now, I appreciate I've actually covered a broad range of things, probably some of interest, some of less interest, depending on what your role is. But nonetheless, I hope this has been useful for you. As I said, these are capabilities available now, and I can't wait to tell you about the capabilities that are coming next year. So I'm hoping that if this is the type of session that you enjoyed and you found it useful, keep your eyes open on our events, because we would be definitely running a couple of sessions early in the new year around SharePoint about what's coming next year. If you've got any questions that you want answered, if you haven't already, please add them in the chat, and I will, in a moment, try and work through those. But with that said, Mike, can I just pass back to you, please?
Brilliant. Thank you, James. Fantastic session. Lots of golden nuggets in there as well. So really like the part around brand management. I can see from the Q&A chat, it's clear from the comments, lots of people were looking forward to that feature. I've been waiting for a long time. And I really like the SharePoint agents part as well. Lots of potential there for the companies on the call. So just to say before we dive into questions, so we will make sure we send a copy of the slides along with the recording. They will come out to you tomorrow. Just a reminder, we are offering a follow-up session from today. So if you like what you heard, or if you want to see how these features can apply to your individual environment, or have any questions, do book onto that. I'll paste the link within the regular chat, not the Q&A now, and that will have a link to the form that you can request that follow-up. Okay, so we have approximately 10 minutes left. So I think, James, let's dive into some of the questions that have been coming into the Q&A. So the first question, people have been asking for brand management for years. When will this be rolled out, and is it for certain Microsoft licenses?
So the brand manager capability that I showed you is available to every SharePoint environment, and will, I'm going to say it's been rolled out, so it will be available in your environment. The way to check is if you go into your Microsoft 365 Admin Center, if you've got rights to do this, and then under Settings, under Org Settings, there will be a setting. There will be an option called Brand Center, And in there, it'll tell you if you've got it, sorry, it'll either give you the option to enable it if it's not enabled, or if it is enabled, as it is in my case, it will give you a link to the site.
Perfect. Thank you, James.
And it's included within E3, E5.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you. Next question in from Ryan. Does the brand management work when a SharePoint site is created via Microsoft Team or just when the site is created?
I'm not sure I quite understand the question, but I'm going to say that the brand management capability within an individual SharePoint site. So if I go to this SharePoint site, just go to the home page, and have this site branding option, that is available at any time, and I can change the branding applied to the site at any time. The brand center, i.e. this is your central place where a brand management team would manage. These, once you create a theme and publish it, it's available to everyone to use. Once people are using it, it's kind of there and is in use, if that makes sense.
Yep, brilliant. Thank you, James. Next question in from Hannah. So is there a way of making certain elements a default? For example, can we default font to a particular size so we don't need to alter it whenever we do something new? Or are we able to toggle published dates to always display as opposed to having to toggle them on ourselves each time?
Okay, so there's two questions in there. So I think what you're referring to there is when you go and edit a SharePoint page, what SharePoint does by default in most of the web parts is it has a starting font size for everything. You can't change that. Okay, it selects the one that it selects, even when you apply a different font package. In respect of the publish date, so I think what you're referring to here is if I create a new page on the heading, there's the option in the heading, right, that says display the publish date, and you want it automatically to be on. The way that I would do that, and I'm pretty sure this works, is use a template. So create this page that you want, and then when you've created the page that you want, so in this page, I've turned on the publishing date, and then basically save the page as a template. I've done this in slightly wrong order, but if I say save page in the template, this page is now a template and the publishing flag is ticked. So every time someone creates a page from that template, your publishing option will be turned on.
Fantastic. Thank you, James.
Long-winded way of answering.
No, you got some thumbs up there. That's brilliant. Next question, and this is from Kirsten. So I've been utilizing the background features, which have been great to play around with. Would there be a way of checking for the background accessibility level?
Yeah, if you mean in terms of contrast, so I'm going to assume you mean in terms of contrast. So if I select a background color, sorry, background thing for here, and then I start writing text, there isn't anything at the moment that SharePoint provides that will tell you that basically that isn't going to be very accessible. In fact, it'll be even less accessible if I select a color that's kind of, less clear like that. There's nothing the tool will do will give you a warning of that, I'm afraid, at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
If that's what you mean.
I think you got a thumbs up there, so I think that certainly covered that one. Yep, perfect. Okay, next question. Are we close or at the stage whereby we could refer or reference a SharePoint page in Copilot? And for further context, this is for when you're prompting.
So the agent that I showed by default references SharePoint pages. So in the demo that I was showing around values, so if I go to this one and then I just close it, go back to the home page, this does use SharePoint pages. Okay, so you can see that it's a page. If this is as I understand what you've said, so if I say values in my chat, just go to my history, it saves me retyping it. Yeah, what are our values? Reference is a SharePoint page, not a document. So it will use SharePoint pages. At the moment, it's just pages and libraries. And with libraries, it's PDF, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and stuff like that. It doesn't use SharePoint lists at the moment. So it won't reference those.
Perfect. Thank you, James. Next question is from Ryan. Hi, James. I don't see a Copilot icon on the SharePoint ribbon. Do we have to turn it on as an organization, or is this a paid option?
It'll appear automatically, providing you as an individual have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. If you don't, it won't appear. If your organization fits the criteria of 50 plus licensed Copilot users, there is a method to go through, I believe, for it to appear for everyone. I'm not sure, because only that change in policy only happened at the start of this month. But if you don't see it and you don't have a Copilot license, that'll answer your question, I'm afraid.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And the next question is, will this be rolled out to the A3, the academic licenses too, regarding the brand center and other of the Copilot features that you've shown today?
Brand center, I'm pretty sure, yes. And Copilot, again, I'm pretty sure, yes, although I'll need to check whether the offer that they're referring to relates to academic environments.
Okay, yeah.
I'll certainly go away and check that.
Perfect. Next question. Can I use autofill columns in every SharePoint site?
Yes, but don't do this. So when you set up autofill columns, one of the things from a governance point of view is you need to specify which SharePoint sites you want to allow it to be used. I saw a community post a few months ago where someone had got an astronomical bill because effectively they hadn't controlled which SharePoint sites it can be used on. And it had become like a viral kind of thing within an organization. People were so impressed that loads of people started making use of it because it's just there. If you turn it on everywhere, it'll appear everywhere. Loads of people used it. And at the end of the month, they got quite a significant bill. So the answer is don't turn it on for every SharePoint site. Just turn it on for the ones that you want to manage, you want to allow the capability to be used. But unless you put Mike's credit card in there, and then of course turn it on for all sites.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. I think we've probably got time for one more question. So, what is the difference between Copilot Studio and agents in SharePoint?
Okay, so that's a great question. So Copilot Studio is effectively the design environment that you can use to either build custom Copilots that have nothing to do with Microsoft 365, or you can use it to extend Copilot agents in SharePoint. So it's more like it's a design tool that if, for instance, I take my HR candidates agent here, if, for instance, I want to customize it in a way that's not supported here, and it's beyond the scope of today's discussion, when I click on this, it will take me into Copilot Studio, which is the development environment. By development environment, though, I don't mean like Visual Studio. It's a bit more aimed at probably people like me who don't do real coding, but I can basically extend and do modifications. It's something that we're thinking about doing a session for, because we believe, I've talked about Copilot agents here. People are saying, well, how do I extend Copilot? How do I extend a Copilot agent in SharePoint? How can I build a custom Copilot that has nothing to do with kind of SharePoint, those type of things? So that'll definitely be, or hopefully be, a future webinar.
Fantastic. Thank you, James. Okay, well, we'll keep everyone posted about that for sure. I think that then brings us up to time. So just finally to say a big thank you, James, to yourself. Brilliant webinar, really enjoyed the session. And thank you everyone for attending, some fantastic questions, great participation there. If you've liked what you've seen, put a comment in the chat, let James know how you found the session, and we look forward to catching you at the next event. Thank you very much.